So with the most recent Borderlands 4 event, where dozens and dozens of streamers got to play a few hours of the game, we now have gotten a look at a bunch of new legendary items across pretty much all of the slots. And while a lot of these are much lower level legendaries, meaning we didn't really get to see legendaries with like 4 different roles on them like you'll be seeing later into the end game, we did get a look at a bunch of really interesting ones. So I'm going to be doing a handful of videos going over a bunch of legendary items, and in this first video we're going to be going over 10 new legendary weapons we got to look at. Now, a couple things before we get into these legendaries. Not all of these seem to be complete, specifically with their legendary role. All of the weapon parts you can now see on the items card, and a good chunk of the legendaries we're going to go over will have a small explanation of what that legendary part is actually doing, but some of them still don't. I think these are just incomplete and they don't have their description yet. And also keep in mind that legendaries are going to work different to all of the other rarities in the game, because when compared to epic items or epic weapons, legendaries are still going to have 4 total weapon parts just like epics, but one of their weapon parts will always be their legendary weapon part. So they only have 3 other randomly rolled parts from all of the manufacturers. When you compare that to epics, that'll have 4 randomly rolled weapon parts on it. So keep that in mind when looking at this as well. So the first weapon we can take a look at is a returning favorite, the Hellwalker. And this is the Panicking Hellwalker. Its legendary role is Soothsayer, and presumably this is going to be like the same from Borderlands 3, where it shoots an inverted pentagram. It also rolled as Jacob's. This one specifically only had the 2 weapon rolls. Keep in mind it's a low level, so that's common. Once you get higher levels, it'll be more common to have more weapon parts on it, but it's also Jacob's, so crits will ricochet projectiles. This roll could actually be pretty crazy. You're shooting out so many pellets that if you hit a bunch of crits, you could just be ricocheting rounds everywhere. And again, this is basically the Doom gun if you've never seen it from Borderlands 3. I'm also not sure if all of the effects are present in this, because I don't think it had the sound effects that it had in Borderlands 3. So maybe it just won't have those sound effects, or it's not completed yet. And next up, we have the Zipper, which is a Dauntless legendary pistol. This roll only had its legendary weapon part, so it didn't have any other weapon parts on it. Again, this is a level 9 pistol. This can happen, but it won't happen a ton, because as you're low level, you won't be getting a ton of legendary weapon drops. But again, as you get higher and higher level, you'll just have more and more chances and higher chances to have more weapon parts as rolls on these. But the legendary weapon part is prison rolls. Gain plus 75% critical damage and a plus 75% damage when hitting a target in the back. So this doesn't actually seem like it'd be incredibly useful all of the time. Maybe if you have something that can CC, like maybe you have Harlow, you put someone up in a bubble and then you go behind them, you can use it. But I'm not exactly sure on how good this is going to be based upon that legendary effect right now. But it seems to be a fully automatic pistol, and it's a Dauntless, so you should also be able to change what ammo it's using. And if I'm not mistaken, on Dauntless weapons, when you change the ammo type they're using, it changes up a bit about how the weapon actually works as well. So there could be some pretty interesting effects with this weapon. And then next up, we have the Begging Cold Shoulder, which is a legendary assault rifle. This again didn't have any other weapon parts besides a legendary, and this legendary doesn't have a description. It's just called Iced Out, so it's not fully complete. It is a cryo weapon with high cryo efficiency. It was shot in Moxie's stream a little bit, and it seems to have 2 different effects. It's shooting out like Atlas tracked projectiles. I don't know if there was a way to like put a tracker on an enemy, but it was also shooting out these like kind of globs of cryo everywhere. So it also seemed like this weapon may not be actually fully completed yet. Not even just its description, but how it actually works. But it seems to be a Torg weapon, which seems to be why those like frost globs are coming out, that also has Atlas tracking projectiles. So quite a weird weapon. And then next up, we have a legendary pistol, the Watching Phantom Flame. And the legendary effect is midday. Zooming in acquires lock on targets over time, and firing while zoomed in shoots the entire mag. Now this is like a revolver, and if you ADS, you can just fully automatic fire pretty quickly, but it will also lock on targets when zoomed in. So that's also going to be really cool. It's also a Jacob's weapon, and this got the Jacob's roll on it, so critical hits will ricochet ricochet to nearby enemies. And even though it's a Jacob's weapon, I'm not sure if the Jacob's crit ricochets will always be on this weapon as well, so that might have just been a really good roll on it. But this seems like it could be a very strong pistol even into the end game, fully automatic on a weapon that seems to have pretty high damage as it is a Jacob's, and also having lock on. This could be a really cool weapon and probably going to be pretty fun to use either way you look at it. This one also had the fire element on it as well. I'm presuming it's always going to roll fire element as well because it is called Phantom Flame. And then next up we have a weapon we actually looked at in my previous video, or we looked at one of the versions of that, and this is the cherry flavored Easy Blast Husky Friend. So this is a legendary TDR shotgun. Its special is alt fire Husky auto turret. Now it doesn't have any other description, but it does have more than the unfinished legendary, so presumably there will be nothing else with this. We did finally get to see some footage with this, and the turrets you're throwing out, because it's a TDR, so it throws out a turret. I don't know if these turrets are turrets with legs or just a stationary turret, but they also seem to be a rocket launcher turret. Like, you throw it out and it looks to be a rocket launcher, so it's going to be shooting explosives as well, which is also really interesting because the shotgun itself I don't think is a rocket launcher, it's just a shotgun, so throwing it out and then also shooting out rockets is quite interesting. Not exactly sure how the damage is going to scale because it's level 21 is 30 by 8 damage, so not sure if the rocket is going to shoot and hit on those damage numbers or not. We'll have to wait and see that. This also rolled TDR as well, and it can roll different mods on it. We've seen multiples of this that had different TDR rolls on it. This one is combo homing. Thrown weapon is homing and can be shot to increase the explosive damage. We got to see another TDR roll where it turns it into a spear, so it's thrown really fast and shoots out 2 turrets instead of 1. Then this one also has a Jacob's licensed accessory. Critical hits will ricochet projectiles to nearby enemies. I'm not exactly sure how good that Jacob's roll is actually going to be, considering it's a rocket launcher specifically for the turret. It is a shotgun normally as you shoot it, so that will probably be good with Jacob's, but not sure how strong that will be with its legendary effect throwing out rocket launchers. And next up, we have the Hot Slugger, another legendary shotgun, and its legendary effect is Blazing Barrel. On kill, the barrel heats up, dealing plus 30% damage for 10 seconds for up to a max of 3 stacks. So potentially 90% damage increase for 10 seconds is crazy. Now this is a one-shot shotgun, or at least this roll is, so it's going to be quite interesting how that's going to work out. If you're really good at hitting headshots, you may be able to stack up this buff and keep it stacked. It is a Jacob's and has the Jacob's roll where crits will ricochet projectiles to nearby enemies. It's a really high damage weapon, and with that ricochet on crits, you could potentially just ricochet and kill multiple enemies with 1 bullet, meaning you could get multiple stacks of the legendary. So I think this can potentially be a really strong legendary weapon. I think there's almost a guaranteed chance that this is really strong if you get like some crazy roll with it in the end game. Now this next legendary is a bit confusing on its legendary power, but this is a legendary pistol, the Roaring Knight's Gambit. It is a Jacob's, so keep that in mind, but its legendary part is Holy Hell. When shot, thrown weapon ricochets projectiles to nearby enemies. I don't know if I'm just stupid or if this is trying to say this is a TDR weapon you can throw, and when that shoots, or when you shoot after a thrown weapon, it ricochets projectiles to nearby enemies. I'm not at all sure what this means because it is a Jacob's and it doesn't even have a TDR part on it, so I'm not sure what this thing actually does, but either way it is a Jacob's weapon and it does have ricocheting in its legendary power, however it's going to be activated, so this is seeming to be a ricochet king. This also seems to be another revolver, not a lot of ammo in the mag with pretty high damage, so ricocheting with that is going to be crazy. You'll also be able to get things like the enhancement mod that allows weapons with Jacob parts on them to have a chance to ricochet with not critting, so you could potentially have 3 different ways to ricochet rounds with this thing, which could be pretty crazy as well. And next we have another legendary pistol, the Rhythmic Queen's Rest, and this is a Torg pistol. Its legendary part is Royal Armory, fires high-speed rounds, and damaging enemies has a 30% chance to spawn a homing sticky projectile. So you're just firing off a bunch of rounds, all with a chance to fire homing sticky projectiles, which are pretty nice. This thing also doesn't have like a crazy high fire rate. rate and it's a low magazine size, at least with the rolls this one has. You could get like a Vladoff magazine or something. And then this one also had the Torg roll of secondary fire shoots sticky gyro jets that explode on reload or when switching modes, which increases explosive damage by 17% each. So this Torg roll and the legendary power are going to synergize, but it seems to be just a Torg pistol that's going to be firing a bunch of additional homing sticky projectiles. Seems like it's going to be a pretty good explosive pistol, especially if you get something like a Vladoff magazine to have much higher magazine capacity than maybe getting like a Maliu on Switch to make them elemental stickies. This thing could be pretty good. And then the next legendary is a legendary assault rifle, the Firm Potato Thrower 4. Now this one only has its legendary weapon part called Spudgun, and it doesn't have a description on it, so it's not completed, but it was shot in Moxie's stream, and essentially you're shooting a bunch of explosives that then kind of spray out into a bunch of other explosives. Seems to be kind of a AoE focused explosive weapon. It is a Torg assault rifle, so it seems to just be spewing out these like explosive potatoes, which is pretty cool. And with this AoE and how many explosives are being shot out, with a decent fire rate and a medium-ish magazine, with some good weapon parts on this thing could be pretty crazy. And then finally, we have another legendary shotgun, the Edging Linebacker, and it is another Torg, and its legendary part is a full coverage. Bouncing projectiles increases damage by 25% and damage radius by 35% per bounce. Now, I didn't see this one shot, but presumably based off the legendary power, it's going to have bouncing projectiles. It is a shotgun, so it has a 15/4 damage. It's a decent magazine, a low fire rate, and this one does have shock damage and is a shock element. Presumably it will be able to roll other elements as well. Pretty interesting. It's probably going to be a hard weapon to use because you're going to want to be bouncing these projectiles, and depending on how many times they bounce, it'll just be increasing the damage more and more and the radius by more and more. So that could also be crazy. If you're good at using this, you can make sure it's bouncing a bunch, so when it's hitting targets or getting to a boss, that like final bounce or a couple final bounces will just be doing some crazy damage. But that's the 10 legendary weapons I wanted to go over in this video. There's still a bunch of other legendary weapons and other legendary gear we got to see, so I'll be doing more videos going over more legendary items. And I've been really enjoying a lot of the legendaries I've been seeing. There's a bunch of really interesting ones, and one of the most interesting and most exciting parts of the game for me still is the license parts system mixed in with legendary weapons. As mentioned, these lower level legendary weapons aren't going to have a bunch of other weapon parts, but as you get higher level, you'll have 3 random rolled weapon parts with the legendary weapon part. So you'll be able to have something absolutely crazy, just adding in so many different effects on top of these legendaries. This is absolutely going to be one of my favorite parts of the game, just farming legendaries and trying out the crazy rolls of them. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.